in the board from India. Okay, so at present we have around 38 accredited partners. As I mentioned, if you look at the three-tier structure, we have ROC, we have GLEIF, and GLEIF has the responsibility to actually manage the network of issuers, and we are actually duty bound to ensure that the operational integrity of the global LEI system is always maintained. So at the bottom and most important, I'll say the tier in the structure is the LOU, which are our partners. We have around 38 partners, which are issuers of LEI. If I have to name a few, we have partners, mostly depositories across the globe. We have partners like Bloomberg, London Stock Exchange, Tokyo Stock Exchange, NASDAQ. And if I have to mention a few names from India, we have LEI, which is the 100% subsidiary of Clearing Corporation of India Limited, which is CCP to the majority of the banks and international trade. And recently, we have also provided accreditation to NSDL to issue LEIs. So from an India standpoint, we have already issued 207,000 LEIs, which is a very up-to-date data, and around 8% of the total LEIs have been issued from India. So probably, which is a very encouraging number. We have around 2.7 billion issued LEIs to date. And the best part about our database is that it is open data without IP or copyright protection. Now, this was about the structure and how it actually, the modus operandi behind the LEI. If I have to talk about LEI as an identifier, so LEI is just not an identifier. It is a ISO standard, which is the ISO 17442. It is a 12-digit alphanumeric code, which is not only a unique identifier, but it also provides a lot of information about a legal entity. So, for example, there's here you can see on the presentation that it's a screenshot of one of the Indian companies called National Stock Exchange. And if you look at the screen carefully, the data is divided into two parts. We call it the level 1 and level 2 data, or level 1, level 2 information. So the level 1 information actually provides a basic card level information about any legal entity. And the level 2 information of a legal entity provides information on who owns whom. So probably that actually provides you information on the direct or ultimate accounting consolidating parent or a child. So that's about the information which an LEI can furnish while you are utilizing it in all processes. So if you look at the chart here, the name is National Stock Exchange of India Limited. Registered at, we have a company registration number mentioned there, and the RA, which is the registration authority here, is MCA-ROC, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Registrar of Companies. So the idea here is to not replace any local identifier. The idea here is to become a connector so that the LEI is issued basis the underlying local jurisdictions identifier. So the LOU who is issuing the LEI usually corroborates the data with the local registry, and basis the corroboration, the validation, they issue the LEI on the top of it. Now, as I was also talking about, collaboration and interoperability. So that is very important. We have to achieve a bigger objective. So from a GLEIF perspective, we have been always very collaborative, and because we were talking about identification and accurate identification of entity, what we have done is we have also done a cross-mapping arrangement with various other internationally accepted identifiers. Like we have a specific identifiers in specific segment of the industry. Like why we have ISIN, which is issued by ANA, which is also, I'd say, a sister concerned entity of GLEIF, because it was also founded by FSB. So we have a cross-mapping arrangement with ANA. We have a cross-mapping arrangement with SWIFT. So probably if any LEI is issued and that entity If any entity has an LEI, and for the same entity, if there is a ISIN already issued or a MIC code, BIC code already issued, so usually you will always find a reference data against that LEI issued. So probably a board's data, which is a business ownership data, or a BIC or a MIC code issued to any LEI, you will always see the information by even fetching information through our APIs, or if you go to our website directly. So LEI does not replace any local business identification schemes. Rather, it acts as a connector and makes local identification schemes globally more accessible. So if you look at this picture very carefully, you will get an idea that what exactly LEI is. So take an example of a passport. So probably we have a passport in India, and what is the procedure which we usually follow for the issuance of passport? The passport authorities will always ask you to furnish or submit your local identification number, which will validate you and say that you are a citizen of India. This is your validation. It will ask for your address proof or ID proof. Similarly, LEI is considered to be a passport for SMEs, because any SME, which is an Indian SME or a large enterprise, would always have its own CIN number issued or any other registration number issued in India. So when an LEI is issued, on the top of it, LEI becomes a global passport for that SME. I'm taking specific example of an SME because large corporate might be very much, known to the institution which are they're actually trading with. But SMEs are the one probably who need to be, we need to have these kind of identifier which can provide more level of trust while executing an international trade. This is what LEI can solve as an identifier. I think just it's a long presentation, so my request to each and every one of you. So we'll be keeping 10 minutes of slot in the end. If in case you have any questions, please note all the questions, and maybe I request you to ask all the questions at one go. Maybe in the end of the session, we'll try our best to probably answer to all your questions in the end. Now, from an India standpoint, I thought it is a good opportunity to talk in detail about the Indian regulation, because as far as my understanding, nobody knows about all the regulations or the mandates which supports LEI in India, because there are many mandates which many regulators in the past have issued. So to start with, I'll start with the PSS Act, which is the Payment and Settlement System Act, 2007. So I always say that the foundation level regulation in India are very robust, and that's the reason it is robust, because in 2016, RBI brought an amendment in the PSS Act, which is an overcharging law under which the regulations are formed. So probably in the 2016, they have brought LEI as a service under the ambit of the PSS Act, and they have recognized LEI as the first issuer of LEI in India. So as I mentioned, that LEIL is the 100% subsidiary of Clearing Corporation of India Limited. So they have also approved them as one of the local authorized issuers in India. At the same time, they brought LEI service under the Act. I think following RBI's footstep, and as you all know, that IFSC-A and the IFSC authority at present is the one, probably they are trying to bring their own legislation, because that's a separate unified regulator, endorsed by the government in the last 2 years. So they have very recently, it is a recent notification, so October notification, wherein even IFSC authority, basis the overcharging law, which is the PSS Act, they have also published their PSS regulations. And if you look at the circular issued on 23rd of October, they have brought LEI issuers under the ambit of the definition of the payment systems. So probably if any payment system would want to have an authorization or want to probably operate in that jurisdiction, IFSC or GIFT City, they would have to first of all approach IFSC authority for a first soft approval. Similarly, for the case of LEI issuers, they have to go to IFSC authority for their first soft approval, and once the approval is done, they can come to GLEIF for the complete accreditation process. Now coming to the mandates, I think there were many mandates, and because there was an inclusion of LEI in the Act in India from 2017, I'll say. So RBI took the lead, and RBI first initially implemented LEI in OTC, and this is what I think probably every jurisdiction has done it. Probably every jurisdiction has started with derivatives by including LEI in the derivative segment. So in 2017, RBI included LEI in the OTC markets, rupee interest derivatives, foreign currency derivatives, credit derivatives. And also they have implemented LEI, a phase-wise implementation of LEI for all large corporate borrowers. So when I say all large corporate borrowers, it means that any large institution having a group level exposure of more than 50 CR from any bank in India. So this was mandated in 2017, and this was in force till 2020, I believe. And there was a separate roadmap and a circular which got issued in 2021, which again reduced the threshold for borrowers to have LEI who have a group level exposure beyond 5 CR. So in 2018, RBI further extended the mandate for LEI for non-derivatives. And the same year, SEBI also recommended to use LEI for eligible foreign entities. Although the concept of EFE for commodity market got scrapped in 2022, and SEBI acknowledged that SEBI also mentioned that anyone who want to, probably a foreign institution want to participate in commodity derivatives can always come through a different route, which is the FPI route. So probably they have opened a different avenue for EFEs to come. In 2022, in 2020, IRDA also followed the footsteps, and they also mandated LEI for all corporate borrowers with transactions over 50 CR. In 2021, it was a very important year for us, I'll say, because RBI did some very important brought up some very important mandates in the payments area. And they have mandated LEI for large value transactions. And they have implemented the LEI in not only cross borders, but they have also implemented LEI in the domestic messages of large value. So LEI currently is mandated for all 50 crore plus transactions cross border. So probably all capital and current account transactions. So all AD category 1 has to necessarily obtain the LEI code from the parties which are in the transaction and report. Similarly, for any transactions beyond 50 crores, domestic transactions, LEI is part of the messaging structure of RTGS and NEFT. So probably it is a way through which probably RBI can also look at identification of the parties or the counterparty identification in payments. In 2022, as I mentioned, the roadmap to probably extend the mandate for borrowers got extended, and any corporate entity having exposure of more than 5 CR, a group level exposure from any financial institution, bank or NBFC, have to mandatorily take LEI and report to bank by 30th of April 2025. So the 10 to 25 crores threshold is already over. It was till 30th of April 2024. So this is not only one mandate, but these are many mandates by different regulators covering different kind of segments in the Indian financial ecosystem. In 2023, as I've been mentioning about many mandates, I think SEBI in 2023 brought two very unique mandates. The first mandate was for issuers of corporate listed non-convertible securities, securities debt, instruments, and security receipts. So this was the first mandate which came from SEBI in 2023 May, and as you all know that there have been few changes in the FPI regulations in the past, and while they were changing the regulation, we also responded to the consultation paper, and we have been very kind that SEBI accepted our suggestions. And in 2023 July, SEBI mandated LEI for all foreign portfolio investors who would want to probably invest in the Indian capital markets. So it was earlier as an optional field in the common application form of FPI, but in July, they have made the LEI code mandatory for anyone, any FPI who wants to probably participate in the Indian capital market. One very important point, probably for the information of everyone out here, is the Payment Vision Document 2025. So, if you refer to the Payment Vision Document 2025 of RBI, which was issued in June of 2022, there is a mention of the broadening of the scope of usage of LEI beyond payments. Because as I already mentioned, in 2021, RBI has already brought a mandate which includes LEI in the domestic messages and the cross-border. But now RBI is keen to probably utilize LEI and explore the usage and broaden the scope of LEI beyond payments. They mentioned about LEI in KYC, screening, invoice reconciliation, etc. So I think it's a great opportunity for each and every all the fintechs to probably align your processes to the vision which RBI has actually documented in this vision document. Yes. So so if you look at the current ecosystem, the current landscape, the regulatory landscape, you will find that in the current regulatory ecosystem, there is a mention of LEI in payments, both in cross and domestic, cross-border and domestic, in derivatives, OTC market, non-OTC market. For borrowers, anyone, any borrower or any borrowing by a legal entity beyond 5 crores. There is also a circular by RBI which talks about mandatorily reporting the LEI of an entity in the database of RBI called GLEIF. So RBI currently use LEI to pull out the aggregate level information of a legal entity, aggregate level exposure of a legal entity. There is recent notification by income tax, wherein even income tax department has also mandated the LEI for any legal entity which is having what you call a return of more than 50 CR. So anyone probably who is filing for a return, any legal entity who is filing a return above beyond 50 crores, LEI code is mandatory for that legal entity. So it is mandatory for insurance, it is mandatory for KYC. When I say KYC for FPIs, it is mandatory. There is a concept called SNAP, Segregated Nominee Account Structure in IFSC, which also requires for an entity to furnish the LEI before they register for the SNAS facility with stock exchanges and depositories. So this is, I think, just to provide you a broader idea that what all are the regulations which support LEI in India. And this is how, and this is what you can easily relate by looking at the number of LEIs which are issued in India in the last 3 or 5 years. So there are similar mandates, not only in India, but there are various mandates across the globe which are supporting LEI. You can look at EU. EU also have a very strong regulation, I'll say, which is called the MiFID II regulation, which talks about no LEI, no trade. So that's a very strong regulation, and that also brought a lot of LEI into the system. There have been a very strong reforms in China. There was a very clear roadmap laid out by China, I think 2-3 years back, for the adoption of LEI, and which also brought a lot of LEIs into the system from China market. Japan also recently introduced in OTC, and Australia is also picking up because they have also introduced LEI in ACES derivatives transactions rule, OTC derivatives. South Africa picking up. I think USA is also a very mature market when it comes to LEI because there are many regulations around it, and even the recent FTDA Act also talks about LEI as an identifier. So we are quite hopeful that probably there will be inclusion there. If I have to talk specifically on EU as a jurisdiction, because it's a big jurisdiction and very important jurisdiction from a global standpoint. So these are the regulations which emphasize a lot on LEI. So there is a regulation on AML, although there is a separate authority which has been created for AML there, but there is a current AML regulation which actually talks about facilitating customer due diligence during the onboarding process utilizing LEI. There is an instant payment regulation and transfer of fund regulation, which talks about the usage of LEI to identify a counterparty while doing a transaction. There is a rule called SFDR and ESAP, which is talking about submitting data through using LEI. So it is actually emphasizing on the reporting part of LEI. So probably a lot of regulators are using LEI as a very vital tool for reporting. Like I mentioned about RBI also uses to pull the aggregate level, group level exposure data of a legal entity. There is a crypto regulation called the MiCA regulation, which also talks about LEI and on an applicable basis for the participants, for the crypto asset service providers. So these are the regulations which are actually bringing a lot of LEIs in that jurisdiction. Now, I think there's also one important aspect to regulations, which is the recommendation by the international authorities and institutions. So to start with, Financial Stability Board, which actually founded us. So FSB has done a tremendous role in terms of the awareness of LEI and making very strong recommendations on the usage of LEI. So Financial Stability Board actually did few recommendations, and there has been a report which talks about options to improve adoption of LEI, in particular for the use in cross-border. So in 2022, FSB explored how the LEI could help achieve the goals of the G20 roadmap for faster, cheaper, more inclusive, and more transparent cross-border payment. So this is a roadmap which was set by G20 to have a better cross-border mechanism. And LEI has also been included in that roadmap as one of the part to be included in the attribute of the payment message, so that the overall objective can be adhered. So there was a report which was finalized in 2024, which is in that report, FSB emphasized that to maintain the momentum in expanding LEI's adoption, and they recommended the FSB members. So just want to quote here that FSB members, they have around 25 jurisdictions which comes under the FSB's purview. And there are many international bodies, World Bank and all are also members of FSB. So they have made very strong recommendation to all the regulatory oversight committee and all their members to continue exploring ways to promote LEI adoption, explore appropriate this usage and mandate use of LEI in ISO 20022 messages, continue to explore the usage of LEI in KYC and other areas like sanction screening. Staged approach, I think probably they emphasized on doing a staged approach rather than doing a blunt, bringing a blunt mandate, which probably can, have an impact on the market structure. So probably RBI has always been supportive of bringing everything on a staged way. BIS, which is the Banks of International Committees, CPMI, Committee on Payments and Market Infrastructure, has also submitted a report to G20, and wherein they have said that the LEI code can be considered as an equal identifier to big code, and not only the unique identifier, but also the address information from the LEI can also be fetched in the messaging structure. So there is a recommendation 16, which is still underway for revision. But in the public consultation which happened in 2024, the FATF have currently reviewing recommendation 16, which emphasizes on cross-border and domestic wire transfer. So probably they mentioned in that consultation that the originator and beneficiary, if it's a legal person, the connected business code, the business identifier code, BIC, or the LEI can be considered as a unique efficient identifier for the beneficiary and the originator. So this is still under consideration, but probably this could also be concluded very soon. There are few jurisdictions which have done a good adoption of LEI in the payment systems. RBI is one of those, and I've already quoted that it is already included in the payments messaging structure of RTGS and NEFT. Bank of England has also done the same. They have also mandated for CHAPS payment messages from February 23rd onward, and mandated LEI usage later on payment invoicing transfers of funds between financial institutions. CIPS, the China Interbank Payment System, is using LEI to identify transactions participating entities. And European Union's instant payment regulations, that I already mentioned in the previous slide, will enable payment service providers, PSPs, to utilize LEI to verify beneficiaries for credit, for instant credit transfer in euros. Coming to my last slide, and probably then I'll hand it over to my colleague. Now, this is so GLEIF, probably, as I mentioned, probably we work with a partner of networks, and we call them as LUs, and we have around 38 LUs, as I already mentioned. But there is also a very important, or I'll say a very good concept with us, which is called a validation agent concept. So like many of you would have witnessed that there are many of your clients would have come to you and asked for an LEI issuance, and then you would have told them to go to a LOU or a local operating unit for the issuance. So there is a route, I'll say, by which even any financial institution which is already into some kind of a KYC process can also become a validation agent to any of the local operating unit, our partners in India or across the globe, wherein they can also facilitate issuance of LEI to their end client without asking them to go and find a LOU and for the issuance. So we have started this concept few years back, and GLEIF onboarded its first validation agent called JP Morgan in 2020. And as of today, we have around 22 organizations which is already a validation agent, which includes banks like Citi, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, Westpac, BNP Paribas. We have few fintechs in India which are already validation agents to our LOU in India, LEIL, and Rubik's Data Sciences and MNS Credit. There is one large private bank which is already in the process to start issuance of LEI very soon. The announcement is still not made, but it is in the pipeline. So that is from my side. I think I've already taken a lot of time. I'll hand it over to Xue. Thank you.
Many thanks, Vikas. So I think Vikas, with what he has mentioned, you can see already the LEI, so many use cases of the LEI, especially in the financial sector. For example, for the validation agent, actually for the bank side, when they embed the LEI in their system, on one hand, they help their clients to fulfill the regulatory mandates. And on the other hand, since the LEI is being connected and mapped with different identifiers, they can also use the LEI to cross-reference into different databases. That's how actually we are also working with a lot of the data vendors or fintech service providers to integrate the LEI in their product or in their services. So that's also where, if you think this is interesting, we are also happy to share some more details. So that is about the financial sector. But on the other hand, in many cases, so the other side of the story is trade. So here you can see that especially in the global supply chain scenario, it is very difficult to identify counterparties or even parties involved in the same supply chain. So that's where actually we are collaborating a lot with the International Chamber of Commerce or some other, like the United Nations as well. So the idea is really to use the LEI to uniquely identify entities, no matter if it is a buyer or seller, but even like logistic companies. So basically to use the LEI as the unique identifier to facilitate a streamlined KYC, KYB requirement. So that's actually where we are also collaborating with certain service providers, especially on the trade finance side. And yeah, because of course the LEI is already being broadly used in the financial sector. And when it connects the dot with the trade, then it's also streamlining the whole trade finance process. But on the other hand, you can see that we also work with the ICC Digital Standards Initiative, so ICC DSI, and that is mainly about the LEI's usage in the digital side, because right now more and more countries started to adopt the model law, especially on the electronic transferable records. So that's where the digitalization of the trade document is really one important and also not a very easy task. So we have collaborated with ICC DSI. You can see the two documents, and they are all talking about, for example, how the LEI being used either in digital certificates or in verifiable credentials, which later, of course, have you provide some more details, how the usage of the LEI in a digital way can facilitate easier and also a trust layer across the whole supply chain. So that being said, if we go to the next slide, you can see basically, so I mentioned, of course, the LEI can be used in two digital ways. So the first one is actually the usage of the LEI in digital certificates. And Vikas, if you don't mind to move to the next slide, then you can see that, so the LEI itself is an ISO standard, ISO 17442-1. And based on this standard, we also developed -2, which is about how the LEI can be embedded in digital certificates or e-sales of a company. So on this slide, you can see an example. It is actually an official certificate authority, China Financial Certification Authority, CFCA. So they have used actually the LEI, they have embedded the LEI in their e-sales. So you can see it's a contract, but actually with the physical, it looks like a physical stamp, but basically it is actually an electronic seal. And if you click, then you see on the right-hand side also more attributes about the company. So here, they have embedded the LEI there, but with the LEI, of course, you can link to the global LEI system where you can get more information and up-to-date information about this entity. We also conducted a pilot between Japan and EU. It's exactly the same concept to use the LEI to facilitate cross-border mutual recognition. So with that, on the next slide, you can see basically how the LEI's usage can streamline the trade and payment flow. Imagine there is one buyer in one country and a seller in another country. They want to do a cross-border trade. So if they start to establish their relationship, for example, with the purchasing order, with the invoices, if they start to use the LEI to identify each other and also to use the LEI to be embedded in their digital signatures, this will already facilitate the KYC requirement from both sides at the very starting point. And then afterwards, if the buyer carries the LEI of the seller across the whole cross-border payment chain, as you can see on this slide, then the seller's bank, which is of course the beneficiary bank, can easily map if the LEI on the payment instruction is the same as the one they have on file when they onboard the seller. So in this case, actually, it helps the beneficiary bank to ensure that this is exactly the beneficiary who is supposed to receive the money, because right now there are also some fraud, which are, for example, hackers, they just forge a wrong information about the bank account. But imagine if you carry the LEI as the matching key, this kind of fraud will not be able to succeed. So that's actually just one example of how the LEI can be used in, for example, e-invoicing and also in the validation for the payee across especially cross-border payment. So that is about the LEI in the digital certificates, but on the other hand, right now there are also a lot of talks about using verifiable credentials, which is based, on the distributed ledger technology. So here we have also developed the verifiable LEI, which is based on ISO 17442-3 standard. So here, imagine in a real world, my name is Xue Tan, I work for GLEIF in a specific role. All this information can be cryptographically sealed in a digital wallet, and I can use it to conduct, for example, different actions on behalf of the company. So that's more or less what the vLEI is about. And on the next slide, you can see also how the whole trust chain is being established. Vikas already mentioned about the background about the GLEIF. So with the endorsement from the global regulators, we establish ourselves as the root of the trust. But of course, the LEI data is also based on local authoritative sources. And then we qualify different organizations who would like to become the LEI issuers. So we call them the qualified vLEI issuers. And these QVIs afterwards will issue basically the vLEI credential to different legal entities. And the legal entities, they can further issue the verifiable credential to, for example, their employees or their customers or their suppliers. So that's how the whole trust chain is being established. So you might wonder then what are the core functions of the vLEI? Sorry. So here you can see that basically with this credential, it's like, a digital business card of a specific person. So if I have this card, then I can show, so basically the validator on the other side can authenticate that I am indeed acting in a certain role within the company. Or I can also use it to digitally sign documents. For example, e-invoicing or like an annual report or all kinds of data points, especially in trade, like the bills of lading, a lot of people need to sign on the same piece of paper. And this can actually be facilitated by using the vLEI. And on the other hand, I can use it also to, log into different portals. So this is a more like a permissioning function of the vLEI. So the next slide actually shows you an example of these three usage of the functions of the vLEI. It is actually a pilot we are doing with the European Banking Authority, which is the authority of all the European banks in EU. So they actually have a portal, and before it's mainly the central banks, which are, more than 20, 30 central banks, they can, provide the report directly to EBA through this portal. However, with a law change, now they need to collect the reports directly from hundreds of thousands of banks. So that actually added a lot of the burden for EBA to really maintain the user credential. But then they got to know about the vLEI. So basically now what we are doing is, so basically all the reporting banks will get the vLEI credential. Right now in the pilot, we have 17 banks. With this credential, with a very easy plug-in, then these banks, for example, the submitter of a bank, can easily log into the portal of EBA and then submit a report. From EBA side, they don't need to, do a lot of like very detailed due diligence about this specific person because the person is being assigned directly by the reporting bank. So it actually also reduced a lot of their, technical maintenance manpower. And this is something that we are almost at a conclusion stage, and we hope it will be rolled out soon to all the banks in EU. So on the next one, you can see it is actually also in a report published by EBA, and they also mention about the usage of the vLEI. And here they also mentioned that actually they invited a consulting firm to conduct the technical check. And this is also the conclusion from the consulting firm that the vLEI indeed is future-proof, and it is also sustainable for basically the broad public to use in future. So I know that we are more or less, we have 9 minutes left, 8. So I will probably just stop here. And yeah, maybe we can just open the floor just to see if there are other questions. Sorry, I saw that Sweta put one question, which is about, the LEI in crypto asset regulations. I also responded there, but of course, if it is not clear, feel free to also jump in. Now I see there are more questions. Yeah, maybe the first one, because I'm not sure if you would like to. I think it's probably more specific on the usage in India. Yeah.
I'm reading the question. It's a very long question. Just
Yeah.
you're referring to a question by Xue Tan? No, I think which question?
I think this question is raised by Manoy.
Okay, Manoj.
Oh, sorry.
Hi Rakesh. Yes, we'll get the deck from GLEI and we shall share the notes.
I think there's a question on do we have any closed loop repository system that once an entity gets LEI, it will be replicated automatically to all FIIs banks. So no, so there's no nothing automated as such, but probably we have open APIs, Manoj, and you can have the APIs directly from a website, and you can utilize it in your processes. This is point number one. Secondly, although our this LEI is used extensively in banking, so probably there are a lot of banks which are asking an API, a specific API to validate whether a PAN of an entity with the PAN they wanted to validate if there is a LEI which is already issued against that PAN or not. So LEI has also created an API for banks, but that is specifically only for banks, by which probably if you input a PAN number and you will get to know the LEI against the PAN if it is issued or not. So maybe I think to answer to your question, there's nothing automated, but probably you can make this automated by consuming our APIs free of cost. So you can have access to the repository, the GLEIF repository.
Yeah, maybe I also just add on what Vikas responded. Indeed, we have a API, which of course, because the LEI itself is really just about the entity reference data. And what you have mentioned, I think probably from the financial institution side, they will know more about, for example, if this entity would need to have the LEI to fulfill regulatory mandates. So there is so they can leverage our API, but of course I do see that there could be some solutions also being built in between our API and the financial institution to make it maybe more automatic as well. And the second question from Manoj is on the DeFi. Indeed, you're right. So maybe just to mention, you also mentioned about FATF. So FATF this year also revised their recommendation 16, which I think in the previous years was also being referred as the travel rule, because I think it also now covers, virtual asset as well. I mean, in certain way, I think this is indeed very new. Different national authorities are still trying to, put in the regulations such as the MiCA, and also to define the scope of, the virtual asset which shall be covered. However, this is more or less what we see the trend, even starting from FATF that. So basically, it is important to build in more, let's say, measures to make sure that the transaction fulfills certain like AML KYC requirements. Like now this time in the recommendation 16, they also mention about the usage of the LEI to identify payer and payee information on top of, name or address information. So I think this is a broad question which probably we will need to see upcoming years how the landscape evolves. But I do see that the trend is there and there will be more and more regulations coming. And
I think
yeah,
just to add here, I think I've also read a few questions. That's a very interesting question people have asked because, and I can, it's very much understood that the people who are asking these questions are the subject matter experts, and they have an understanding of the processes that probably they're working on. So just wanted to say that the adoption of LEI requires that all areas where probably everyone is looking at. Maybe it is blockchain, crypto, DeFi. So probably that's the reason we also mentioned about a lot of recommendations coming from international bodies as well. Even like Xue mentioned, we are also closely working with FATF probably to see and explore wherein LEI fits where. So this is not only with what FATF we are doing, we also does the same thing with BIS and many of the projects which are undertaken by BIs, we are also part of it. We are also, there's a concept called Finternet, probably, which is also a concept probably emerged under the leadership of, the two visionaries in the BIS. So we are also, collaborating and trying to explore synergies there as to how LEI can be used in that, vision document, or how LEI or the verifiable LEI can support the blockchain ecosystem or the DLT systems. But and probably my request to maybe Fintech Convergence Council is to, I will share the deck, and I'll be more than happy to maybe connect with you on a personal basis or one-to-one basis. I'm more than happy to take any discussions forward if you have any specific questions or questions in the process, or if you have any ideas probably you would like to share with us. We're more than happy to collaborate and help. Yeah, I will share my details for sure.
Definitely, we shall facilitate if there's anything that's sort.
And sorry, I saw, sorry, there is another question from Ritu about the specifications. I assume it might be just about maybe, for example, the LEI will be a bit about the data points, and the vLEI maybe also about the technical specifications. If this is the right understanding, so you can see I put two links underneath. So one is about the LEI data, where you can find it is based on a common data file format. And the vLEI, you can see also the specifications. I think there are also some GitHub links where it's more a bit technical specification. And I see the next one.
There is a question on transaction. So yes, if any transaction which is beyond 50 crores domestic, and if the parties, any of the parties, a legal entity, the LEI's code is mandatory. Yes, the bank will ask for an LEI code. It is not mandatory for individuals, but only for legal entities.
And I think there is one from Ayanaba. Is there a legal mandate or a proper one in future to use the same in the Indian fintech space? I believe then it is referring to the LEI usage for the fintech. I'm sorry if I understand wrongly. Please, please just jump in. So for the fintech, I guess it's more about how the LEI or vLEI can be built into your services and products. I'm not sure about maybe I don't have sufficient knowledge here just about the mandates in this space. But Vikas, would you like to maybe add anything?
Yeah, so there's no mandate as such specifically when it comes to fintechs. So there is a mandate coming from RBI when it comes to participation in derivatives. There's a mandate coming from RBI from non-derivatives. There's a mandate from SEBI on FPI registration. There's a mandate for legal entity which are into credit exposure beyond 5 CR. So there are mandates on various segments by a regulator. But one thing probably I would like to emphasize here is that, particularly if we talk about India as a marketplace, there are many mandates coming from RBI and SEBI. But I think in my interaction and what I understood so far, that even regulators want now that the private sector to voluntarily adopt the usage and explore the usage of LEI. So probably we need to think beyond mandates now and look at the application of LEI, the reference data it can bring out of it, because it is free of cost. Because we are a federated system, we don't charge anything for the data. And the idea is to create a transparent ecosystem not only in the country but across the globe. And this is the only way by which probably SMEs will have more credibility, will have more visibility in the international trade ecosystem. So I know few fintechs which have done something very tremendous by including LEI in, like Xue mentioned, in the UN Citral backed model law backed international while they were trying to digitize the international trade document, they've included LEI to identify the buyer, the two parties of the trade. So similarly, I think you people can also think about usage of LEI. You can also think about the usage of vLEI, because vLEI is a very unique and a very important concept which not only identifies a legal entity, but that identifies a person representing a legal entity. So this is something very unique, and EBA, the European Banking Authority, is using it for for reporting purpose. So to have a accurate understanding of who is actually reporting what. So we also have in our ecosystem various reporting systems wherein institutions or intermediary has to report something to a apex regulator. So we can also think of permissioning, usage of LEI in permissioning or also in validation. So this is my view on it, but I'm more than happy to connect with you, each one of you separately. Yeah.
And sorry, just to answer, I think it's the last question from Sarah. It is about the LEI company reference data will cover updated information of beneficial owners. So indeed, within the LEI reference data, there is the relationship data. So right now, the relationship data, because as you can imagine, there are two different important points. The first one is so in different jurisdictions, there are different standards when it comes to, beneficial ownership. And the second one is also that there are, a lot of data privacy law there, especially, on individuals. So that's why the LEI reference data, because it's completely open and for free, the relationship is mainly captured based on financial consolidation. So if you look for an entity who has the LEI, and you can see, for example, based on the financial accounting, who are the direct and ultimate child or parent entities. So this is the information. Indeed, it is also kept up to date, especially during our renewal cycle. So this is the information that users can get completely for free. Okay, I see we are actually a bit over time. I'm not sure if there are more questions.
Yes, do we have any more questions? If not, then we can conclude this here. Okay, great. Then. Thank you, Vikas. Thank you, Xue, for such an engaging webinar. We look forward to having you again with us.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also our pleasure.
Thank
Feel
you.
free to reach out to us in case of further questions.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a very nice weekend.
You too. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Bye.